Welcome back, everyone, to Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Sadkoviak, and we are pleased to be joined by a special guest again tonight. That's been kind of our thing the last couple weeks, midweek. We are joined once again, by Matt Flip. He's joining the elite pantheon of repeat guests on this show from the Roar Lions Roar podcast. Mr. Matt, sir, thank you for stopping by again to chat with us tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, fellas. Thanks for having me back. It's somehow, some way, Penn State has gotten to 7-0. They're going to make it to November undefeated for I think like just the second time in my life. And it's the big one coming up. It feels like everybody is going to be finding out how hard it is to get to State College this weekend with all of the visitors who are set to come to town.
Well, don't you dare try to come in on a plane because we know that won't happen.
Yeah, you're gonna.
Oh
gonna
my
learn
God,
about
ain't
the
that the
airport
truth?
situation.
Oh, man.
Boy, Clinton, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I've tried to tune out the Ohio State. I don't want to use the word idiots because that's not nice on Twitter, but I had patience today. Let's just get rid of Ryan Day. I'm sick of this. He can't coach, and I'm like, guys, let's be realistic here, okay? So I had to hammer it out and lay the line with them. I'm tired of Ohio State fans at times. Let me tell you, as much as I love Ohio State, it's stressful.
Can I tell you something as a friend in confidence, Clinton?
What's that?
Saying Ohio State fan and idiot is a little redundant.
Man, if we have any of them that listen to them, I hope they come after you. I don't really think they're idiots. I just think they're crybabies.
They can't be any worse than the Indiana fans.
That's true,
Or,
Matt.
we had some Alabama fans.
Yeah, we had some IU fans chirping at us today, Matt, and we've been on the IU bandwagon since preseason, spring.
Don't make me say bad things about Indiana. Don't make me say I don't want to do it. It's what's that meme where it's like the guy's got the tear down his eyes while he's holding the gun at him. I'm like, that's how I feel right now. I'm just like, don't make me just say psych. Yeah. And Notre Dame fans. I hate Notre Dame fans. I stay off the message boards now. It's better for my mental health.
Well, Ryan, how are you? Before we get rolling,
dude, I did some adult stuff today. It was a lot of. I finished the fence, which I have not been touching for God knows how long because I didn't want to have to cut a metal pole again. That was scary, but I did it. Yeah, and I did some other stuff, but that's boring, and we won't talk about that because adulting is not fun. I'm excited to talk about this game because, I mean, the only way it could have gotten any better is if Ohio State beat Oregon, but nevertheless, it is still a 3 versus 4 matchup. It is still a matchup with quite literally everything on the line, right? Like we have, I mean, potential Big Ten title game berth on the line. There's a lot of narrative that's surrounding this game from both sides. And I mean, you guys are both pretty well equipped to handle that one. So Clinton, where do you kind of want to start on this here?
Well, honestly, I would like to tap in with Matt and just kind of the vibes for the Penn State fandom, the vibe around Happy Valley, just up to this point in this season. We talked with him in this fall preview, almost called it a summer preview, fall preview, about how Penn State usually clips themselves at some point in a game before they get to something like this, and they have not. So Matt just kind of started us off with the vibe around Penn State. Uh-oh. Can you hear him, Ryan?
I cannot hear him. Uh-oh.
I saw his mouth move, and I couldn't hear him.
Oh.
You got me?
Oh. Yep, we got you. Success.
The vibe around this Penn State team, similar to my audio issues, it's riding high for a while, but then all of a sudden a hiccup happened in all of the happened on Saturday night. The vibe around Penn State overall is really, really good right now because they won a USC game that previous Penn State teams lose, no doubt. They won a Wisconsin game with their backup quarterback on the road at night. If you remember back to Penn State 2021, they were 6-0. Sean Clifford gets hurt in the night game in Iowa City. Taquan Roberson comes in, and the offense basically poops his pants on live TV for an hour and a half. So to watch that not happen and to watch Penn State win games that it would normally lose in other years has a lot of people feeling really good about where things are at. But there is also the element of Allar is playing his last 2 halves of football have been his best 2 halves in a Penn State uniform. The second half against USC and the first half against Wisconsin were the best we've ever seen him, in my opinion. and now he's hurt. Deny Dennis Sutton, there's a lot of depth there. He's hurt. Anthony Donko, their best run blocker, he's hurt. So it's hard for Penn State fans, I think, to really know how to feel right now. Because, again, you're 7-0, but it feels like the wheels are getting a little bit rickety at the worst possible time.
I was just surprised you guys were able to sneak Trace McSorley out on the field Saturday night without anyone noticing. But
Beau, I'll tell you what, Beau, the Trace comps are very real. One thing I'll give Beau credit for, Beau is like a legit 6'2". I think McSorley was a very, very, very generous 6 foot, maybe 5'11". So like Beau moves really well. He's got a better arm than Trace did. But Beau grew up a Penn State fan. Beau, you guys actually might find this interesting. Beau is the first Pennsylvania quarterback to get a scholarship from Penn State in like a decade. So Beau is like Mr. Pennsylvania for a lot of people. So it's cool to watch the guy who grew up a Penn State fan, who wears number 9 because of McSorley, get his moment in the sun. That was neat to see.
Well, funny you say that because they did an interview with Mr. Will Howard today, who grew up a Penn State fan, is from Pennsylvania, and did not get the Penn State offer.
I did see that.
And I'm just saying, I love, like, he had some edge in his voice with that. And I'm just like, dude, hey, what's up, casual Big Ten? Can you just transfer that edginess to the rest of the damn team? Please. Grab him by the face mask and be like, wake up. And let's see that ferocity throughout the rest of the team. Anyways, back to Penn State now. Ryan, you got anything?
Well, I didn't know if there was like a question there or where you were going with that, or
no. It was hilarious that he brought up Pribula, right, as the Pennsylvania guy. And I just watched the Will Howard thing today, and I'm like, holy cow, it's just flip flopped. Like, it's pretty cool to see.
The Howard thing is crazy because I think he was 2020 class, and Penn State took a player in that class, not to talk poorly on a college kid, Micah Bowens, who I think is now playing like in his 6th year as a backup at a D2 school. So not exactly the best talent evaluation in that specific class for Penn State.
Well, let me ask you this, Matt. What's going through your mind on Saturday evening when you're watching this game and it becomes clear? They pan over to the sidelines. Drew's talking to the trainers and they're talking on the broadcast. Sideline reporter comes in, hey, something's going on with Allers. Like, I don't think he's going to come in because, I mean, that's a dicey situation, man, because we're talking about a game where I don't know that Wisconsin was necessarily like a trendy upset pick this weekend, but you could, like, you didn't have to squint hard to see, like, hey, night game at Madison, the competition hasn't been great, but they're playing better. And now, oh God, the quarterback goes down and, we're down in this game and what the hell's going to happen next? And it's a situation where certainly a lot of things can go off the rails, but we're also talking about a kid who's played some. They got a package for him. There's certainly been a lot of consternation, I don't know if it's the right word, but among the fan base, especially maybe more so last year when Drew was struggling, like, oh my God, put in Beau, blah, blah, blah. The backup quarterback is the most popular kid on campus type of stuff. But what's going through your head in that situation? And then how does kind of that emotional roller coaster play out through the rest of the game as, there's a little bit of struggle early and then he finds his footing and leads to just remarkable touchdown drives to ice that game away in the 4th.
I thought Allar was going to play. Like, first of all, because he goes down after contact. Like, when it's a non-contact injury and somebody's slow to get up or gets hurt, your mind immediately goes to, oh my God, it's ACL, it's MCL, it's whatever, it's something terrible. So when he gets hurt, and if you go back and you watch the replay, he gets right back up. Like, there's no time on the turf. He pushes himself right back up. And I think the next play is a screen pass to Katron Allen that it's clear he can't move on. He chucks the ball in the dirt. So I thought, all right, fine, whatever. Get to the half. Get him some treatment, put some ice on it, stretch him out. Like, we'll be fine. So when I was hearing that, hey, Pribula's kind of going to have to start warming up here, my immediate thought went to the Taquan Roberson game against Iowa in 2021 for Penn State. I mean, how does your mind not? But Beau has played enough football that I think that Penn State knew what he could and couldn't do. And that wasn't necessarily true back when Roberson came in 3 years ago. So I knew that there would be a plan. I could not be more pleased with Andy Kotelnicki. And that's a guy who's done amazing things with 2 quarterback systems with, Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean last year at Kansas. So I'm like, if push comes to shove, the defense is playing lights out. Braden Locke is going to throw an interception at some point. That's kind of just what he's been doing. So I thought you can game manage your way there. And Beau made better throws than I ever thought he'd be able to make. A specific one to Harrison Wallace in like triple coverage. Beau, please, if you're listening, never make that throw ever again, because I cannot believe that happened. But once things got rolling and you really understood that, Beau reads really well. Like, he holds the ball extremely long because he is very, very good at figuring out when to keep the ball and when to give it. I thought you'd be able to get enough out of Katron Allen and Nick Singleton to make it just fine. And lo and behold, they did it. And they just sprinkled in a lot more passing in it, too, than I thought they would have any right to with Beau in. So I was nervous for sure. But once it was clear Beau could handle this, it was because again, with Anthony Donko out, Penn State's best run blocker and their starting right tackle was on the bench as well. So I was originally pretty worried it could get out of hand, but I mean, Beau's a ball player. He just figured out a way to get him some points and, enough to win the game fairly comfortably.
And now we enter, obviously coming towards the Ohio State game. Ryan has heard me talk fairly a lot about JTT and Jack Sawyer's inability to generate a pass rush or get a sack, right? They have some of the highest pressure rates in the Big Ten, but they can't get the sack. But what they are elite at is the run game. And you just mentioned Penn State's best run blocker injured in this game. One, I don't expect it, but do we have any injury update or any idea what happened in the game with him? And two, how confident are you that the next man up can slow those two or stop those two?
So two things. Donko was not injured in this game. He's been hurt since like UCLA, and he hasn't been as good since that injury, but he did play every single snap against USC. So like even while hurt, he did play through it, and there was the bye week in between. It looked like a little bit of a re-aggravation. Like it was definitely a shoulder again. Reading between the lines of Franklin's presser today, I do think he'll go. Like I think Anthony Donko will be able to play. But backing him up is former 5-star and Wisconsin transfer. So it was actually cool to see Nolan Rucci be able to play a ton of snaps at his old stomping grounds. I'm not a big believer in PFF. Rucci did grade fairly lowly in the PFF grades at the end of the game. But they have options there. Like JB Nelson was a starter for them at left guard last year. He's still on the roster. It was like your swing guy at tackle if push comes to shove. So if Donko can't go, there are guys there, and not like guys you're throwing to the wolves, like guys who have played in the Big Ten for multiple years. So they're not nearly as good as Anthony Donko, but they have options if Donko either can't play or isn't able to play up to a standard that can keep Jack Sawyer and JTT out of the stat sheet in a big way.
We do tend to notice that JT Tuimoloau does go supernova, is to quote Ryan, I think 2 episodes ago. Anytime he plays Penn State, he finds
his one game a year,
whatever superstar talent he has, and he unleashes it against the Nittany Lions. I don't know what it is. Maybe you guys pissed him off, didn't recruit him or something, but he's holding grudges and breaking things up when he plays Penn State, man.
2 years ago, he dribbled the right tackle at the time, like a basketball, essentially, and got an interception of Sean Clifford, one of the other quarterbacks who was here a million years. And I think about that all the time. Yeah.
And what about Denai Sutton? Pretty much looked like a groin. Ryan and I as PTs, I think we probably guessed that right away. That's tough, right? I saw Nick Bosa go down with one of those a few years ago, and that is extremely hard for a defensive end to play through, any football player, but a defensive end. Any reading between the lines on Franklin's presser for Denai Sutton this week?
Of the three of them, of Allar, Donko, and DDS, I think Allar and Donko will play. Like, again, Penn State hasn't practiced yet this week, so it's impossible for me to say. And, like, I wouldn't know either. Like, they're going to keep that as close to the vest as they possibly can. But Denai, reading between the lines, like, Penn State did mention that true freshman Max Granville, who has already played in 2 games this year, they'll have him ready, like, if they need to use one of the games for him. Granville, kind of a rare story if he even plays, but he was supposed to be in high school this year. He, what's the term? Not re-enrolled, reclassified, and came up. But, DDS is a great player. They do have 2 great options behind him in Amin Vanover and Smith Vilbert, a 5th and a 6th-year guy who have been around a long time and who have been, able to cause a little bit of chaos. But DDS would be a pretty big loss if he's unable to go.
Especially when you consider, with him and Abdul Carter, it's kind of like a pick your poison on who you're going to, leave the tight end to chip for, leave the running back in to chip for. Then you only have one. Obviously, that puts more pressure on Abdul Carter, not only because okay, well, now we don't have him out there. Someone's going to have to make a play. I'm a leader on this team. I want to do that. But also, oh, shoot, I don't have my running mate out here. Now they can kind of just key on me and be like, all right, we're just going to scheme a way to take this guy out of the game here. Obviously, I mean, I think he's a good enough player where he is capable of that. But I mean, part of what we talked about preseason was his position switch from linebacker to the edge, more full time now. How do you think he's handled that so far this year? It looks, I mean, pretty well from the outside looking in, at least.
He's hitting his stride. It took him a while, I think, to hit his stride. And I got to give credit to Tom Allen. Like, once KJ Winston went out, KJ Winston played 1 game and 2 snaps against Bowling Green. We did not get very much of KJ Winston at all. And that was like the linchpin of the defense. So, like, you really don't think about your safety goes out. What does that mean for your edge rusher? But like you had to find a way to replace that, and some of that was moving Abdul Carter back to a linebacker role. Sometimes, if you watch the USC game, Abdul Carter dropped back in coverage, a ball hit him right in the hands, and he dropped it. It's like, yeah, why you're not a linebacker anymore, dude? That was never really your strength. So he will still drop back, fairly often, but he's a different level of beast, and he's really starting to figure out how to get past guys coming from off the edge. He was always good at rushing A gap. He was always good at rushing B gap. But at this point, having to find a way to get upfield, not overshoot the guy, and at least have a shot to get a sack, or at least, Clint, you mentioned pressure rate. Penn State's not getting a ton of sacks either, but their pressure rate through the roof. A big part of that is Abdul Carter, and especially these past few weeks with him really figuring out what his role is in this defense. And, I know the coaching staff has to be ecstatic that it's working out this well.
What's been your impression of what's been your impression just of the defense overall? I mean, obviously an elite unit last year, and then when you're replacing the defensive coordinator, that can, go one way or the other. And it seems like they really have not missed a beat off of last year.
The Bowling Green game kind of sent everybody into a frenzy. I'll tell you what, man.
Nobody stops Harold Fannin. Nobody does it.
Yeah, that first half against Bowling Green had a lot of people, myself included, being like, dude, Manny left for this. Like, it was tough. But I got to give Tom Allen credit. That he's really figured out a way to be a good defense again. It feels a lot different than Manny did. Like with Manny in State College, it felt like Penn State could go out there and force a turnover on the very first play. It definitely doesn't feel like that. It's way more bend, don't break. The turnover numbers are down. The sack numbers are down. But they do just a very good job of not getting beat. Like, you think about when Penn State gets beat, on the very few big plays this year, it was the end around on the first play against USC. It was a wheel route against UCLA. Like, Rob Marks had a couple of big runs for USC, and that's really been about it. So it's not so much this dominant see ball, get ball anymore. It's more like how it was with Brent Pry here, which is like a fine way to play defense. I think it's just taking a lot of fans, myself included, to readjust to what that style of defense looks like, because it does look a lot different than when Manny was here.
Yeah. Well, flipping back onto your D-line, Ohio State is in a hole right now at left tackle. Josh Simmons, obviously done for the year. Zen Mahalski, prayers up for him, whatever it is. I hope he gets better and gets better soon, but did not play well in the entirety of that Nebraska game. Now, Nebraska, a lot of people forget how good that Husker defense was because they got railroaded by Indiana. They are a top 10 defense with a top 2 rush defense. They worked Mahalski all game, which has me and many other Ohio State fans just like, well, we know who's going to line up over the left tackle the entire game, and that's Abdul Carter. This might be a nightmare. And without knowing what Ohio State's going to do, and I honestly don't know if they're going to reveal their plan so that Penn State has, the guy who's going to come in, you may not have anything on anyways.
Yeah. But
that's a concerning part for me as an Ohio State fan, is lining up in this game and being concerned about, you mentioned Abdul Carter's, just his pressures. Like, maybe they roll Will Howard away from him, which I expect them to do with a new left tackle here, but he's still going to put heat on him. And I'm nervous. I know Will Howard, thank God. Go ahead.
Are you more nervous in terms of pass blocking or run blocking? Like, or just all of it?
Well, run blocking wasn't good on Saturday either. That was the worst run blocking performance I've seen all year. However, I have a lot more faith in the run game. I worry about the pass game. Okay. And my next point that I was going to bring up to you was how does Penn State, if Ohio State chooses, because of the struggles in the run game, the second half with Oregon, and in most of the game with Nebraska, they just choose to air it out. Will Howard has been ice in his veins through this entire season. He had one bad pick Saturday. I was listening to some of the podcasts that talk about it, and it was just kind of like guys weren't on the same page. Made the pick. It happens. But the way he's led the team, they're talking they may let him throw and air it out a lot more. And how do you feel about the Penn State DBs being able to cover Emeka Egbuka, who lines up in the backfield, who lines up in the slot, who lines up outside, takes jet sweeps, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, who just popped one off. I could go on and on with the receivers. How do you feel with Penn State's DBs being able to cover against these guys if Ohio State chooses to air it out more this week?
I'd feel bad against any group of DBs lining up against Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Like, I would be scared no matter who. You could have a group of Thorpe Award winners, and I would still say, I'm going to bet against you. The Penn State secondary, without KJ Winston, which, again, that was the key to this whole thing, has taken a lot of stride. They've made a lot of steps. Jalen Kimber's been very good. A.J. Harris has been very good. Elliott Washington, who was probably CB5 in the preseason, has now emerged as basically a co-starter. I think Harris and Kimber played 48 reps against Wisconsin. Harris played 47. So he's really emerged as a guy for them. You know, in the second and safety position, Jalen Reed's a dog. Like, he's first team All Big Ten, no doubt about it. Zakee Wheatley, a long, skinny, like 6'3", lanky safety, has become one of the better tacklers on this team, which is a story I didn't expect. He had 10 last week as a safety, which was crazy. And then true freshman Day-Day Lane has taken his lumps, but he played his best game last week. Penn State runs a lot of man coverage. Like, that's just what they do. They run way more man than they have in the past. I think it's a big reason why they're not getting as many picks as they did last year. I don't know how you run man against Jeremiah Smith. I don't know how you do it against Emeka Egbuka. Like, I just don't know how you do it. So I'm curious to see if they go more zone to try to throw that off a little bit, because they really don't run a ton of zone. Like, Penn State loves to go man. They love to move Jalen Reed up to what they call the lion position, where he's near the line of scrimmage. They'll bring him as a blitzer, and he can get home with the best of them. Like, I'm very impressed with his blitzing ability. I don't know if you can do that. And the Penn State defense isn't at its best when it can't do that. So that's probably the matchup that has me, keeping me up at night, is that these receivers, it feels like Ohio State always has one. But last year I watched Penn State get in a rock fight in Columbus for 3 hours. And the thing that won the game was one team had Marvin Harrison Jr., the other team didn't. And I always want to make sure that Ohio State at any given moment could have a guy like that. And I think they might have one or two with Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's a matchup problem might be underselling it a little bit.
And, which is crazy because the Penn State secondary has been playing super well. Like, this has been the run defense has been outstanding. Like, Alonzo Ford, an Old Dominion transfer from 2 years ago, 6'3", way more athletic than he has any right to be. He played his best game against Wisconsin. Zane Durant, I think, is playing himself out of college football next year with how good he's been up the middle. There's really not that concern there. So it feels like if the secondary is going to be able to do anything, it's going to have to be as a result of the front seven gets home and forces Howard to underthrow a couple balls.
Yeah, and that's, like, if you think about how the defense operates as a whole, the best way to take a guy out, a dominant receiver out of a game that you don't think that you can match up with one-on-one or even in double coverage is just make sure the quarterback can't throw the ball to him, because, well, he doesn't have time to go through his progressions.
Right.
So that'll be interesting considering the injuries on both sides of the line there. I want to, Clint, unless you had anything else on the defense, I want to flip over to the offense, because you mentioned it kind of just in passing. You've been really impressed with Andy Kotelnicki this year. What's been just kind of the overall impression of the offense as a whole? Because it seems like, you touched on Drew's getting better, for sure. He's living up to that 5-star potential, even though, like, statistically, points-wise, it doesn't necessarily look as staggering as one might think when we talk about a dominant offense. What's been your overall impressions of the unit as a whole over the last, 3-4 weeks going into Big Ten play?
The offense as a whole has kind of become what I thought it was going to be. Like, every year we do a preseason over-under episode where it'll be like, over-under 29.5 sacks for Penn State, blah, blah, blah. I set the over-under for the Penn State passing attack to finish at 10 yards per attempt. Do you guys want to take a guess what they're at right now?
I'm going to go ahead and say 10.
I was going to say
Wait.
8.5.
9.9. So they are right. They are right there. So it's really been what I thought it was going to be. It's been an explosive run game, and granted, those runs haven't really been there with Singleton a little bit banged up. I do think they're kind of really nursing him back along, and I think he'll be full go for this week. Just like he's back there returning kicks. If he's really hurt, he's not returning kicks. Like, let's call it what it is. And the passing attack has been kind of what I thought it was going to be as well. It's very Tyler Warren heavy. And then the top two receivers are Trey Wallace and Liam Clifford. Amari Evans is a deep threat. And Julian Fleming rounds out the room as like a pretty good wide receiver 4. So Kotelnicki has done a very good job understanding what the pieces in this offense have to be. They're explosive in the passing game. You know, that 9.9 yards per attempt is like top 10 in the country. And I feel like a big reason why a lot of people don't view the Penn State offense as explosive is because they keep on doing this thing where they rip off 50-yard gains and then go down at the 2. And then the touchdowns are 2-yard touchdowns. So it's like the plays are there. They're happening. It's like, for the love of God, just get in the end zone. Like, you got 6 feet to go, dude. That like routinely happens, and it drives me nuts because the offense does look a lot better, but like you see the highlight reels on Twitter or whatever, and it's like, oh, cool, Katron Allen from 2 yards out. That's what a lot of it's been. So Kotelnicki has done such a good job, I think, nursing the offense along. He's figured out that Tyler Warren is a special kind of football player, and he figured that out very quickly. And it's the offense runs through him. Singleton and Allen are back to their 2022 selves and their 2023 selves. And then Trey Wallace and Liam Clifford have found ways to move the sticks. So the offensive line is decent. I think they're a little bit better pass blocking as a group than they were last year. Obviously, Olu was an elite pass blocker, but the sack numbers aren't anything, egregious. So it's been really, really, it's been a good marriage between those two. And I'm excited to see what absolutely insane things he has in the bag for this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say this feels like a in your bag game as an offensive coordinator where, I mean, we already saw a pretty crazy one against USC with Tyler Warren snapping the ball and then running a wheel route. But
anytime Tyler Warren throws, I always get reminded, it's like, oh yeah, this dude was recruited by Virginia Tech to play quarterback for a little bit. And then everyone figured out, dude, you throw like an idiot, but they still let him do it sometimes. And he has a passing touchdown on the year. Like he's finding a way to do the job. Warren is special. And I want to make sure that, I always try to appreciate that because Penn State's had a lot of really good tight ends in the Franklin era, especially, Jesse James, if you remember that name from way back when. Kyle Carter was another really great one. Mike Gesicki, Freiermuth, like they're all these guys. Warren is the most complete of all of them. And he's the one who got to campus never playing tight end before. So he's like the most unlikely one. So I got to give the kid credit. He has turned himself into an elite player at that position.
So I kind of wanted to push it a little harder on the wide receivers here. I have been fascinated with Tyler Warren throughout the season, kicking myself for not having taken him in our college fantasy football draft because I'd be even further ahead in our league. Go ahead.
A couple years ago, we did a draft of a 7-on-7 team, and I was mocked relentlessly for taking Tyler Warren first overall. So my favorite joke anytime Tyler Warren does anything is I'll tweet it from the RLR account, just like first overall. And sometimes people who don't know the joke will respond, and it's like, you can't seriously think Tyler Warren's going to go first overall. And I'm like, he already did. Too late. He already went first overall.
I already did it.
It's one of my favorite bits.
I'll do it again, too.
That is awesome. Well, I think I'd be remiss to think you didn't see Denzel burnt toast against Oregon. Was absolutely roasted. Bad day for the kid, right? And that left many Ohio State beat writers commenting on the fact that, well, he's not going to get tested that way again until he plays Oregon potentially in a rematch in the Big Ten Championship. I put a little pause on that in my thoughts, given what we've seen from some of the Penn State wide receivers, particularly in that West Virginia game. There were some explosive plays there. Then, I'm feeling more confident, right, that Burke's coming into this past week against Nebraska. Well, he got benched for a series or two, and Jermaine Matthews came in and played for Burke. I guess I'm asking, like, is Penn State or are Penn State's wide receivers explosive enough to expose Ohio State more so Denzel Burke and Mr. Handsy David Igbinosun the way that Oregon was?
There's one guy who I think can do it, and that's Amari Evans. Amari Evans is he's a true junior now, but he came in and allegedly, again, Penn State's turf famously runs really fast and they hand time it, but allegedly he ran like a 4.3 as a freshman.
Okay.
What that means, probably close to 4.39. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
What can you really take with that? But he is clearly the fastest player on this team and the deep threat. Like, Trey Wallace is the guy who you get him the ball at the 40, he's going to make a guy miss and he'll have a big play. But if you want to know who the guy is who can take, the top off a defense, and Allar has the arm strength, assuming he can plant on his leg with the injury, hit him in stride, it's number 5, Amari Evans. He was kind of held in check by Wisconsin. They kind of struggle when you put just a safety off the top to kind of find a way to get him the football. But again, going back to that West Virginia game, they have just done the play where it's throw it up to him, Amari Evans will just track it down. So they do try to do that. But if there's one guy who I think fits that description, it's going to be Amari Evans. They need to find a way to get him more involved. This Ohio State defense is too good to bank on multiple sustained drives. Like, not even in one half, in a full game. Like, you look at how Nebraska got their points, it's explosive plays. Those are probably going to come from Nick Singleton, Tyler Warren, and Amari Evans. But again, being held without a catch, again, I know part of it was Pribula came in, and I'm sure Amari would have figured out a way to get the ball in his hands in the second half that Allar had played, but they need to find a way to get number 5 the ball so he can take the top off the defense and open things up, in the short game for guys like Tyler Warren.
Certainly.
So heading into this weekend, if we are operating under the assumption that Drew Allar is going to play and he's going to be somewhat in the neighborhood of 90 to 100%, how do you anticipate the offensive game plan being devised to try to attack this Ohio State defense? And if he's not able to go at 100%, or if they have to give Pribula a little bit more look to try to stress the defense a little bit more horizontally as opposed to just vertically, how do you see the game plan being potentially different between the two quarterbacks if it's Pribula instead of Allar?
Pribula, it's tough because Pribula can throw, but he can't throw the ball like Allar. He can't make sideline to sideline throws. He just doesn't have the arm strength for it. Pribula can give guys hell because he will keep the ball as long as possible on a read with the RPO until a defensive back, either turns their back or breaks on the run and just lob it over there. He can do that kind of stuff. But in terms of making teams defend 53 and a third, it's tough for Pribula to do that. So if Allar's the guy, I think it'll be very run heavy. I think they're going to do everything they can to get Singleton the ball in space. That's the game breaker. If you're going to find a big play, that's the most likely option. And by big play, I mean 70-yard touchdown. Tyler Warren can have a million 20-yard gains. And I'm curious, that can be considered a big play. But if you stall out in the red zone, who cares? If you kick field goals, who cares? If Allar plays, I think it's a heavy dose of Nick Singleton. I think it's a ton of Katron Allen. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors to get Tyler Warren the ball in advantageous situations. There will never be a scenario where a team plays Tyler Warren again, like when USC just let him run a wheel route 30 times for 17 catches. That will never happen again. But if Allar does play, I think Penn State is going to spam that with the hope that the safety gets a little bit of happy feet and they're able to hit Trey Wallace, Liam Clifford, Amari Evans, Julian Fleming over the middle between the hashes. Penn State doesn't do a lot between the hashes with Drew Allar. They did a lot with Beau Pribula, which I was kind of surprised by. But again, Beau can't make sideline to sideline throws, so it kind of makes sense. If Allar comes in, I think it'll look a lot like the West Virginia game plan. If Pribula comes in, I think it'll look a lot like the Wisconsin second half. You look at the box score, Pribula's YPA is about a full yard fewer than Allar's. That kind of tells you the story right there. A lot more dink and dunk, a lot more read option, a lot more Liam Clifford because Beau loves to throw to Liam Clifford. And I just don't think that the opportunity for 40-yard bombs down the field is going to be there if Beau plays. And I think they're going to try to make them there if Drew plays.
Listen, Lincoln Riley may have changed his defensive coordinator, but he still has not figured out how to cover a tight end. At some point it was it's got to be joking. 44, dude. No one else wears that number in the history of cool offensive players. Just go to that guy. Yeah, it was something else. Dalton Kincaid 2 years ago when they played Utah, who had like 15 catches for 300 yards against
I
them
think
or
so,
something
yeah.
like that. It's crazy.
Absolutely worked them.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that matchup with Warren. I think Ohio State used Caleb Downs a lot more in an attacking way this past week, which thank God they're doing something different other than lining up with 4 defensive linemen and say, hey, we're gonna rush with this, and this is it. Downs came from all angles.
Mm-hmm.
Downs is a future first round pick. I wonder, I'm kind of stuck. Like, do you want to take him out of that ability to find some additional pressure on Allar? Or do you want to let him go against Warren because he's your best athlete on defense to try to provide some coverage to this kid? Otherwise, your options are probably going to be they played Jordan Hancock, moved him back from like the slot corner to safety to fill Downs' spot since Downs took Ransom's spot. But they also put in a freshman. You mentioned about safeties with happy feet. Jalen McClain played this past week. Filled in admirably, did a very nice job, but he's young, right? So if Kotelnicki with the smoke and mirrors can utilize what he needs to, you're probably going to get a freshman to bite. Maybe they don't let him play as much this week because of the scenario, but I'm really intrigued about how Ohio State's going to try and deploy coverage against Warren because they know he's their best playmaker in the pass game. I'm not sure. I think Sonny Styles would have the ability to match up a little better with him. Cody Simon going to be pretty susceptible to Warren. So that's a huge matchup I'm going to be watching all night long, and I'm excited to see that.
How do you think, like, the Jim Knowles, not to flip this quick, but I'm just honestly curious your thoughts on this. How do you think Jim Knowles will prepare his guys for all the different ways Penn State tries to line up Tyler Warren? Like, because if you mention all those players, like, it can't simply be just man at this point. Like, Tyler Warren lines up in the backfield. He lines up at tackle sometimes. He lines up as the top guy in like a diamond formation. Like, how would you, what do you expect the, counter to that to be?
Confusion because him and Larry Johnson can't get along with the defensive line.
Listen, Larry
honestly,
Johnson's on a mural in downtown State College.
Yeah, I love the man.
Yeah.
I love the man. It's time to hang him up, though. I've seen enough wide 9 defensive lineups that leave gaps wide open that my white clumsy ass could run through. I can't imagine what Allen and Singleton are going to do. But honestly, I don't know. I think that's where Ohio State struggles sometimes is some of those in-game adjustments. And maybe Penn State, they're going to probably utilize it all 4 quarters with moving him around. But if he's eating you up a little bit in the first half, they're going to make a change to come at you differently with him in the second half. Can Knowles make that in-game adjustment? I don't know what it is, but can he do it? Because I've not seen it a few times, especially in these big games. And vice versa. Maybe Ohio State does stop him or slow him down in a way in the first half, take him away. Kotelnicki's going to go into half and be pretty damn creative in what he comes out with in the second half. And then I've seen Ohio State shut things down in the first half and then live with it and not make the adjustment to the adjustment in the second half, and it burns them. And that's where more of my concern is. I'm not as concerned in the first half. It's what Penn State's going to do to adjust to get the ball in his hands more, or to make him as a decoy to get the ball in other players' hands, and then Ohio State not being able to adjust off that. That's the scariest part for me for this defense, especially if they're not getting hits on the quarterback.
That's a great read by you, though, because Penn State's first half offense has been pretty mid, to say the least. Like, third quarters when they really start figuring it out offensively and defensively. I think they haven't allowed a third quarter point yet this year. So it's, the impetus is on Penn State to set the tone. Like, Penn State's playing with all the house money in the world. Like, you're in the middle of the longest losing streak to Ohio State in program history. Ohio State already has a loss on the schedule. The playoff and everything you want is right there in front of you because somehow, some way you didn't lose to USC. So I would be very curious to see how both these teams react to that first 15 minutes. I think not that a game is ever won or lost in the first quarter, but I think that'll be the most telling quarter of football, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ryan and I noted this in multiple games in a row. They were slow starting first quarter into that second quarter. If Ohio State picks a night to come out and start fast and Penn State's slow, by no means do I think either team whitewashes the other, but the game may be over in the second quarter if they're up 17-3 or 17-7 on you. If you got to play catch up, you don't want to have to do that.
No, especially with running games each team has. These are
absolutely
4 of the best running backs in America.
This is still we're 9 weeks into the season. These are still my number 1 and number 2 duos in the country. I've loved these guys from the start. I think the biggest question though lies in the head coach, both sides of the ball. But I'm going to put to James Franklin for you. He is 1-6 versus top 10 teams at home. He is 6-9 versus ranked teams at home. He's 1-8 versus top 5 teams, and he's 1-9 against Ohio State. The one win coming off the infamous Urban Meyer decides to run his field goal team out with about 12 seconds left on the play clock to kick a field goal, gets blocked, and returned to the house. And I throw my remote across the where we used to live at OU, across the room, pissed off that we were going to lose this game. But James Franklin, man, I got married. You guys can yell at me you want. I got married in the fall on the Ohio State-Penn State game.
Oh, my God.
James Franklin blew that game with his calls. This was I guess I should fill you in when that was, Matt. That was 2018, the 2018 game.
1 point lost at home for Penn State.
They had it. It's like, what, 4th and 5, and he runs the ball, and Ohio State tackles him for a while. I'm like, what? I had to rewatch the game. We went to our honeymoon, but I came back. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? I think that's still in there. Like, he got over the hump with the USC game, right? They proved that they could pull that out. But many, like people say, there's a block with Ryan Day with Michigan. 1-9, there seems to be a block with Penn State, James Franklin with Ohio State.
Yep.
What do you expect from him this game, and what does he need to do as the coach to get over the Ohio State hump?
This is what my podcast host Bill hates when I use this term, because there's no actionable item behind it, and it's simply figure it out. Find a way, figure it out. Again, I think I said this when I was on with you guys the first time. When you're James Franklin and you got this job because you won 9 games at Vanderbilt, your whole thing is that you kind of figure it out. Like when you win the Big Ten in 2016, year 3 into your time at Penn State, with a roster that, like, I think featured a converted defensive tackle starting on the offensive line for you, you figure it out. Like, you've been a guy who figures it out. And you rattle off all those stats, and it's totally fair, but no coach is good against top 5 teams. Unless you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart and you're number 1. If you're not number 1, you suck against top 5 and top 10 teams. I think that's beyond fair to say. Is it worse with Franklin? No doubt. Like, the numbers, you can't lie. The numbers don't lie. But James Franklin has to figure it out. I think he's got enough coordinators now from outside of his tree who have come into the building, who have their own experiences. Tom Allen was a head coach for a long time. Andy Kotelnicki took Kansas to heights that they will dream to reach again. There's a lot of voices in this room that have to tell James Franklin, hey, this is a bad idea if you do X here. Hey, this is a bad idea if you do Y here. And I think Franklin's a better in-game coach than recruiter. Like, I don't think that's controversial to say. The guy's never signed a top 5 class. He signed twice as many classes ranked outside the top 20 than he has in the top 10. Like, his numbers show he routinely coaches better than he recruits. But in these big moments, he just has a habit of just getting nervous. And there's one specific play that has me thinking that this might be behind him. And that's when on the road, down 2 scores against USC, he let Andy Kotelnicki call a double pass where the guy who caught the touchdown snapped the football. A scared coach doesn't make that play call. If you're scared, you can't make that play call. So that specific play stands out to me so much, because it's like, that's not the kind of guy who's going to run on 4th and 5. That's not the kind of guy who's scared to make that call. No. And Allar's been the quarterback this year who's not afraid to lose the football, and that wasn't him last year. So he just needs to, and again, I hate to give this answer, but I don't know what else he can do other than just figure it out, man. Like, just find a way to end this streak. This team is too talented. I've watched worse Penn State teams beat Ohio State than this one. And I get that this might be, I get it's a $20 million roster. I get it's a very, very, very good Ohio State team. That explains away like 1 or 2 losses. When we're trending for 8 straight, like, at some point you just got to say, hey man, I don't care anymore. Find a way to win the game.
Every streak comes to an end.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason Tennessee can beat Alabama twice in 3 years and Penn State can't beat Ohio State twice in 8. Like, there's no reason.
Absolutely.
I'm so fascinated by this game as the outside observer on the podcast, because it feels like such a heavy narrative game, given what's
Oh my
kind of
God, yeah.
circling. Maybe more so now at Ohio State, given the outside factors that you just mentioned, right? Like they brought the whole crew back for a national title run, and it'd be one thing if they're both sitting here undefeated, where it's like whatever, it's a 12-team playoff, it doesn't matter. But if you're Ohio State and you lose this game, and all of a sudden your national title season is sitting here with 2 losses heading into November. You still have Michigan on the docket. You still have Indiana on the docket. You no longer control your destiny for the Big Ten title game. I mean, you're still getting into the playoff at 10-2, but like, are you feeling good about that? Are you feeling good about playing a first round game at Georgia or something like that? Plus, then the heat turns up on Ryan Day because then it's another loss against a top 5 team, and oh my gosh, they can't win top 5 games, and oh my God, are they going to beat Michigan this year? Meanwhile, on the other side, I mean, for Penn State, it's on the one hand, it feels like if you lose this game, it's like, well, status quo. We're going to go 11-1 and make the playoff, which is what we all thought before the year. But at the same time, with Penn State fans, it's like, if not now, then when?
That's been my thing for a long time. Like, this is the window. You got ours, like the first 5-star to come here in a decade. Like, the roster is built up. You got 24-year-olds on your defensive line. You got everybody to come back. Like, the 12-team playoff kind of changes how we view everything, and I don't think any of us really know like what a window means anymore because the playoff field is so big. But I'm with you. Like, I thought this was their 2-year chance, and if they're going to have not that 11-1 isn't like that still be the best season of my lifetime, and I would love to go 11-1, but if they go 11-1 and beat Ohio State and then lose to Minnesota, I feel a lot better at that than if they go 11-1, lose to Ohio State and beat Minnesota, or vice versa. So, you know what I mean? Like, the Ohio State game is the
truth. This is truth because it is so much more fun to sit here at 7-1, having lost in Northern Illinois, but having a win over the SEC champs, as opposed to you lose that first game and then you beat Northern Illinois. It's like, well, you still haven't beaten anyone good. Well, we went into Kyle Field and won, bitches. So suck on that. Yeah, no, that's
100%.
Because when you get down to the playoff rankings, and I think I did not time this well, but I'm interested in what happens in the polls regardless of the result in this game. I think that is going to be incredibly fascinating as well, because I think it's one of those things that if Ohio State wins this, I can't see Penn State falling all that far depending on the context of the game. But if Penn State wins this game, what do you do with Ohio State? 2 losses then? Where are they going to fall?
9.
Yeah, I could see that. I had another point that I was going to make, and I just completely lost my train of thought.
Well, if this
Maybe
were the
it'll come back to
SEC and Penn State beat Ohio State, Penn State would go to 1, and then Ohio State would just follow them to number 2 if this were the SEC. They just move them both up because if you look at what they do with the SEC, Missouri somehow is still a top 25 team, and they're absolute dog poo. So,
look, if the SEC wanted to be taken seriously, I would have put at least 1 team in the national title game last year instead of the Big Ten putting 2. But that's just
right.
True.
That's right, baby. 2 of them.
We're
going to run it back to back this year because Ohio State, Penn State, or Oregon will win the national championship this year.
Wow, there's your
One of
Indiana
the 3.
disrespect you were trying to avoid.
Yeah, listen.
Damn, Clinton.
I'm in love with the.
Coming
I'm in love with the Hoosiers. They are America's team more so than the Dallas Cowboys ever will be. But as I said today, and Ryan agreed on the show last time, I need to see them beat that big boy, that blue blood,
of course,
before I'm 100% sold. I don't care that Michigan has not been good this year. They are still Michigan.
Helmets matter.
They have they have a great defense. I don't know what the hell they have on offense, but they have a great defense. And a great defense can change any game. Rourke has 1 bad game. Rourke isn't in the game, and Taven Jackson has to play, and Michigan lights him up. You lose. We both said this. If they don't have Rourke for the Michigan and the Ohio State game, I don't know how they beat them. I think they're also, this is, again, a really fortunate schedule for them that they don't draw Penn State this year. Like our guy Sammy told us in this fall preview, if he's essentially for them, if not now, when for this team. Like, this is the easiest schedule we've had in years. You have to take advantage of it. And it's a magical run. I hope all 4 of them make the playoff. That would be great for the Big Ten, right? I think it'd be so much fun to have the storied team of the year make it, sitting, 11-1 if they only lose to Ohio State. I don't know how you keep them out. You know damn well if Vanderbilt was 11-1, they'd put them in automatically. So
an 11-1 P4 school, especially from the Big Two, will get in. I feel pretty confident.
Absolutely better.
Yep.
I see many people out here arguing Otherwise, I'm like, no, they're 11-1. They have been the most impressive team to this point in the Big Ten, in my opinion, with coming from where they were last year to what they are now. Like,
Oh yeah.
how could you deny them? The coach is everything you'd want in a coach. Like, hell yes, let's get 4 Big Ten teams in. That gets Ryan and I even more juiced for our postseason episodes to keep rolling and having you guys on more and more to build this up. So I'm excited to see. November is where champions are made, right? This is how you're going to get there. So let's see if we can get a November to remember in the Big Ten, not to be corny with that expression, but
I love it.
Sales. November.
Now every kiss begins with K. That's more my alley. I'm kidding.
I still don't remember what my point was, and I think it was a really good one, and I'm kind of annoyed about it right now. I'm not going to lie.
What was the topic we were on at that point?
Oh boy, I don't even remember. It's long gone by now.
Weren't you talking about the Heat with like Franklin and Ryan Day? You were bringing up towards Ryan Day, and if Ohio State
like
lost,
that, and I think I kind of moved off of that a little bit. I don't know, man. This is dead air now, so we're going to move on.
He's 32, 33, but he's going on 65 with Alzheimer's.
Listen,
so
I got a goldfish brain. It's not great. That's why I got to take Liz to the grocery store. So how we've been kind of phrasing these questions in terms of not like give us a game prediction, but if Penn State wins this game, what will have occurred on either side of the ball to make it happen?
I think number one, first and foremost, is Penn State will win the turnover battle. You think back to the Clifford years, Penn State had Ohio State on the ropes in Happy Valley 2 years ago. They were leading in the fourth quarter. Clifford, as a 24-year-old, sixth-year senior, turned the ball over 4 times, and that's what lost Penn State the game. It's whoever wins the turnover battle, I think, wins this game. So Penn State needs to take care of the football, and they need to hit. I think Penn State defines explosive runs as plays of 12 or more, and explosive passes as throws of 15 or more. So they need 7, is what I'm going to say total between the two of those. If they hit 7 or 8 or 9, I think Penn State wins this game, because that tells me that they're able to move the football a little bit. Again, if you're going to score on Ohio State, it's going to be through big plays. You're really not going to find success looking for sustained drives. And I think Andy Kotelnicki's like one of the few offensive coordinators in America who can find a way to find 7 or 8 opportunities against this defense. So I think it's those two things primarily.
Where are we at on the Big Zamboni nickname?
I don't get it. Honest to God, I don't get it. Like, he grew up in Wisconsin. That's it. I think that's the whole
he
story.
learned how to drive a Zamboni at one point in time, and Gus Johnson ran with it and said,
yes,
"The Big Zamboni."
Gus Johnson runs with everything, man.
I will say Andy Kotelnicki does have this really just like dudes rock kind of vibe to him all the time. Like there was have you guys seen him? He's like a short little guy. Like he's like, nothing insane. And in his in one of his media availabilities after the Wisconsin game, somebody asked Beau, it was like, what's your relationship like with Andy Kotelnicki? And Beau was like, oh, I was cooling down like after like a lift or something at the Penn State football building, and I had my shirt off and I was like doing a lap around the building. And he's like, and then Andy saw me doing it, so he came down and took his shirt off and just started walking with me. And it's like, what a weird dude. Like, I think he's one of the most fun. Like, again, he lets a tight end snap the football and catch a touchdown. He's clearly a very fun dude. I just think I'm so happy he's at Penn State right now, and if he can find a way to beat Ohio State, he's instantly up there with like Joe Moorhead in terms of how Penn State fans are going to view their play callers.
Build the statue. Clinton,
What
will it if Ohio State wins this game?
Dude, you asked. I was going to call you out. I was like, dude, you never ask my thought on this. If what's Ohio State going to do?
Listen, the floor is yours.
Ohio State, what they need to do. The first thing is you got to win the trenches. Let's go to the offensive line for that side of the ball. You have to keep 18 upright. And it's a little easier when it's not Kyle McCord. I have cement on my feet back there. But you got to keep 18 upright, and I think you got to let him throw the ball. Ohio State, it's going to be tough to run the ball against this defense. Penn State is a top 10 rush defense coming into the game last week. I think they were only allowing 95 yards per game rushing. That is an elite rush D you have to go against.
They allowed 30 to Wisconsin, so it went
down
a good bit. And
because the punter, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's even better now. So I think you have to utilize your greatest weapons, which are your receivers. and find ways to attack Penn State, not only underneath, because Penn State may do similar to what Oregon did and live with the 2 high safety if they need to, and Ohio State will eat you underneath, that's fine. But I think you have to take some shots. I think you have to be bold enough to do that. Chip Kelly, you cannot call what you called against Nebraska in this game or they will lose. And on the defense, it's the same thing that I've said every week. It's trenches there too. You can't just, it's not good enough to have pressures in this game. You have to capitalize with sacks. If you're not going to hit Allar and put him on the ground, I don't think you're going to affect him that much because he's a different quarterback this year than last year. He looks less afraid. He looks less timid. He's not going to be afraid of, hey, there's JT, the Penn State killer, running at me. Well, it's nothing if he doesn't hit you, right? So it's all the trenches to me. I want to see Ohio State control this game. If you can't control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, they will not win this game.
That's fair analysis. One thing I got to ask you is, Clinton, because I've heard people have this take earlier. Last year in this game, neither offense, I feel like, both offenses refused to change what they were doing. And a lot of that led to, I think, a very low-scoring game. And again, the difference maker was, oh my God, it's Marvin Harrison, and he can do whatever he wants. And Penn State's counter to that was Dante Cephas, who was blocking on pass plays. That was super fun. Have you noticed this year that the Ohio State offense, which does like to let those deep passes develop with 5-step dropbacks, do you think Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are too stubborn to change that? Or like, will they do the same thing everyone else has done against Penn State this year, where it's 3 seconds ball out?
I think Ohio State lives kind of in a world that they're just going to take what you give them. Okay. That was the big thing. Like, Will Howard was interviewed before, I think it was during the bye week or heading into the Nebraska week game, and they were just talking relentlessly about, we haven't had a chance to, as James Franklin would say, chuck it deep, because too many people are sitting those safeties back there because they don't want to get burnt by Egbuka, or mostly now Jeremiah Smith. We've seen a lot of Egbuka's work be underneath in that 5 to 15 yard range, if not out of the backfield. And good Smith has been the guy to like take the top off. I wonder if maybe they change a little bit now because of Carnell Tate kind of showing up a little bit more. I don't know if he was banged up a little bit earlier this year, but whatever it is, he was more involved in the offense this past week. Ohio State said in the bye week and in last week they were going to be more committed to throwing it down the field. I think it's just going to be patience. I think they're just going to take what you give them, especially after last week's performance. The one thing I hope they don't do, dear God, don't throw bubble screens and swing passes into the short side of the field. I don't care about Ryan Day's philosophy that, well, running east and west, eventually that makes them tired. Well, it doesn't matter when they tackle you for 5-yard losses. This is not Marshall. This doesn't work all the time. Penn State has 4- and 5-star caliber athletes who will play in the NFL. They have a great defensive coordinator who also gave you trouble in the 2020 game with his defense in Indiana. So he's going to know how to attack a Ryan Day-ish offense. I know it's kind of Chip Kelly's, but I don't want to see east to west. I need to see down the field. But I think Ohio State's just going to take what Penn State gives them.
Okay. Smart game plan. Chip Kelly has called an offense for a long time. I'm sure he's got stuff in his bag that we're not prepared for, similar to Colton Mickey would.
I would honestly venture a guess they've, outside of the Oregon game, which I still think, I've still not seen Will Howard use his legs enough for what I anticipated coming into the season.
The Kansas State offense he ran.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's this thing with Ryan Day and like hesitancy to run the QB. Like they turned Fields loose, right? And you didn't have, I guess you still had Stroud in a way backing up Fields, so you knew what you had, but he didn't want Stroud to run. That came out after Stroud left. I get why now, because Kyle McCord was there. No, another dig on Kyle McCord. But I wonder if it's the same fear now, is that he doesn't trust Devin Brown enough. And then if Will Howard gets hurt, is my best option having to play a 5-star freshman who has no game experience? At this point, man, you got to shit or get off the pot. It's time to turn him loose and let him use his legs, because that's his best weapon outside of, I think, his brain. Let him use his legs, and you're going to have to do it to beat Penn State. You didn't do it enough against Oregon, and I think you might have to do it as this season goes on if they're fortunate enough to make a rematch in the Big Ten title or the playoff.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, he did only have 81 rushes last year.
It is. I know how well his mobility is. I guess the big expectation I thought was going to be in the red zone this year with his mobility, and just he's a tree trunk, right? Like I wouldn't want to have him get a 5-yard run and try to run into me. He's just going to mow you over.
He is a large man.
And just the dynamic ability to play off him, Henderson, and Judkins. Ohio State didn't get a lot of red zone action this past week, so I'm not really sure what's going to happen this week. So,
I'm fired up for this game. I'm sure you guys are too. Clint, did you have anything else before?
no, man, I wish Penn State the best of luck. I said it yesterday, and I'm still sitting here today saying right now I'm taking Penn State to win. I'm not picking Ohio State.
I'm taking
in
Ohio
this
State
game.
to win.
Okay,
Oh my gosh,
we'll go
you
opposites.
guys, quit with this reverse jinx bullshit. Jesus Christ. Put some stones into it. Matt, before we let you get out of here once again, go ahead and shout out. Let our listeners know where they can find you, what you've been working on.
Yeah, you can find the podcast. It's a Roar Lions Roar, a Penn State podcast. We're in your feed 2 times a week on your podcast platform of choice. We usually do our game recaps Monday or Tuesday, and then our previews are usually Thursday. We will have the Wisconsin preview out later on tomorrow morning. It's scheduled to go out, and then we'll be doing our Ohio State preview on Wednesday night for a Thursday release. You can find that on Twitter as well over at RLR blog. You can watch us tweet just some of the dumbest jokes you're ever going to find, and we will take a lot of joy in that. If you want to read my thoughts on the Chicago Bears, as always, America's only morally good NFL franchise, you can find those at MattFlip42.
A morally good franchise that cannot defend a Hail Mary.
That's why we handed the Commanders a nice win, because they were that respectful of everybody's time. What a game. I was so mad.
I heard Caleb Downs, or not Caleb Downs, good Lord. Caleb Williams in the post game, he was able to complete one pass. He threw a trash can in the locker room and hit somebody in the head. That was a joke on Twitter floating around today.
Oh my God. They'll get there. Sooner or later, they'll figure it out.
Listen, they're better
if Indiana
than they
can
were
win
last
8
year.
games, the Bears can win the NFC North before I turn 50. That's my belief.
There we go.
That's awesome. I like that.
Those are his beliefs. He's sticking to it. Well, Matt, as always, it was a pleasure. Thanks for taking some time for us tonight. We'll have our picks for this game as well as the other games in the Big Ten slate on our Thursday show this week. We'll see you all then. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Have a good week.
Cheers, fellas. Thanks, guys.
Good times.
Cool. How was my audio after I dropped it for